I love soccer. I love the aspects of what sports teach, and everything. You got to lose. You got to lose in life. Every time you lose is an opportunity to get better. When I'm at work, I'm the same way. I value everybody here, right? But they also have to understand what's important to me at business. There's an expression that I like to use that real estate is easy, people are difficult. I think having a good sales background is critical when you're dealing with multifamily because you're dealing with people.
This is your Real Estate Syndication Show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today, our guest is Robert Martinez. He's a previous guest, but it has been a while. Now he is up to 4,849 doors and has grown a ton. He's going to dive into a number of things today. Just around managing a team and a growing team and hiring and firing, but also even some hard knocks over the last couple of years that I feel like most are not so eager to share about. But he's going to share and talk about how they've handled some of those and what's helped them to succeed through that. Not only him and his team, but his investors as well. So you're going to learn a lot from Robert today. Robert, welcome back to the show. I feel like our pre-show discussion could have been the show itself. So I'm looking forward to this in a big way. So I'm grateful to have you back.
Man, Whitney, thanks so much. It's been too long, and congratulations on your show success. My God, you're like the Joe Rogan of multifamily podcasts. That's amazing.
I appreciate that in a big way, Robert. Well, 48, almost 4,900 doors in, no doubt many lessons learned, Robert, and just an amazing team and the structure you put in place. Looking forward to diving into that. Something that's not talked about often, though, and I learned just by doing a little research about you, it's something I'm very passionate about. And I know the listeners know this about me, but I love hearing it from guests who are also passionate about being well known at home as well as in the office, not just in the office, right? But I know you have a passion around soccer and a balance, between this professional life that you live, but also family. And so I'd love to hear some background there, which maybe you're not asked about often, but how do you, getting to 4,900, almost 5,000 doors, no doubt that's taken many hours in the office, right? And away from family. But hey, how do you do that?
Yeah, I think you just have to understand your why. And you have to understand, why are you here? If you're going to sacrifice time away from your children and your family, then when you are with them, max out on that. I'm at a point now, I've been doing this since 2007. My boys today now are 19 and 16. My 19-year-old was in college. His soccer career is over. But when he was playing soccer, man, I'm that dad that's like going to the games, cheering for them loud. People are looking at me because I'm so loud. And I used to always just tell myself, you know what? If I don't yell for my kid, who will? And if you don't like it, then maybe you should yell for your kid. Maybe it's making you feel bad that no one's yelling for your kid. Well, my kids know that I'm on the sideline. Whether I was coaching their first teams until they retired me and hired professional coaches to where now I'm just a fan on the sideline. I notice that if I can sit there in the stands and I'm yelling, but if my kid needs me to stand up and go walk up and down the sidelines because I feel like he needs that extra motivation, I'm going to do it. I love soccer. I love the aspects of what sports teach, because in everything, you got to lose. You got to lose in life. So don't be immune to it anywhere in life. Every time you lose is an opportunity to get better. There's that expression that's up to come back. And I think that's true in personal life. I think that's true in business life. Soccer, sports is such an amazing thing. First of all, it's amazing what you can do up and down. My kids look like they're steel. Like they don't have an ounce of fat on them. They're like, you can bounce a quarter off of them. I mean, they're amazing, but it teaches them toughness. Because in soccer, there's a lot of back and forth. Somebody goes down 1-0, 2-0. I've seen the craziest things where teams are losing 3-0 at halftime, and then all of a sudden the team takes their foot off the accelerator. The other team finds a little pride, finds some heart, and they come back winning a game 5-4. It happens, and I love that aspect. It's just such an amazing thing. But I want to make sure that I'm there for my kids because I also know that if I do this, this is how they're going to treat their children. They're going to make sure that they're there on the sidelines. And, I love my father to death. He was a fantastic man. He worked at Whataburger, which is a fast food chain here in Texas, for over 40 years, my entire life that I was born. But often the work came first for him. And I remember showing up late to the soccer games, late to the soccer practices. And I never wanted that feeling for my kids. And I think maybe that's why I overemphasize. And so now that I've done that, my kids now understand what it's like to be a father for their children in sports. You got to push them because kids don't know any better. You got to help them train. You got to give them the nutrition. You got to do just the heart and the mindset of what they need because they're going to take that later in life. You know, I wouldn't trade my children and their mindset for anybody. They're little bulldogs. They understand adversity, and I love sports for that. Is the adversity because there will be adversity in life.
No doubt about it. So many lessons to be learned from sports, especially for our kids. I love the topic because I think it's often just forgotten about. We're so focused on this business success that we fail too often, right? As fathers or husbands. How did you navigate, say, leaving the office early enough every time there's a soccer game, to the rest of the team? Right. Well, are you concerned? Wait a minute. The rest of the team's going to be concerned. I'm leaving at 3 o'clock every Friday or whatever it was.
Yeah, fortunately, it wasn't that early, but there was a time and a place, right? I mean, I got to get there on time. In those early years, especially when you're a smaller team, I had more time, and so I can get something because I have fewer properties, so I can get what I need to get done. But it was just an understanding that, hey, I've got to get the kids to practice. I've got to go and eat here at 4 o'clock, so I can go pick them up from school, get in some food, take them to practice, and it was just understood that that's what was going to happen. It was very rare that my former wife at now took them to practice. It was me. And I'm there again on Saturdays. Like it was just something that they understood was very important. And I love it now because, many of those staff that were there watching me with my young kids now have their own kids. And they know that I value that time. They know that if they need that time off, I will be accepting of it because I don't want somebody else raising my children. I want to raise my children. I want to make sure that I put into them what I think they need in life, not somebody else and somebody else's thought patterns and belief.
I agree completely. I want to be the one raising my kids. So, very important. I appreciate you speaking into it. I feel like I said, I've not spoken into enough. Well, Robert, give us, if you could list out, like, let's say just 2 or 3 things over the span of your, the real estate career that has made, say, the most significant growth, for your business. What would that be?
Well, first of all, just changing my life. Real estate completely changed my life. I had to take a chance. I joined a real estate club back in '07. I paid $10,000 to join that club, which was at the time a whole lot of money compared to today. Something that nobody else was doing. This is back in 2007. There wasn't a lot of apartment sponsors, syndicators, what have you around. So you're believing a guy on the radio who's selling educational courses thinking that this isn't like fraudulent. This isn't like a Carlton Sheets kind of thing or those kind of, fly by night infomercials or night. And so just getting in that and overcoming that negativity and doing something that everybody else said not to do. Wait, well, you're going to do what? You're going to own apartments? You're going to spend $10,000 on some guy? Nobody back then gave anybody any kind of money for coaching and education. And now it's much more common to do that. People realize the importance of a mentor. I myself have paid Grant Cardone money. That was one of the first things that I think helped me get into it. And then you go into it and you realize, okay, your business is a reflection of you in the mirror. How you operate in your own life is how your business is going to operate. Your standards in your personal life and your home life are what's going to show at business. And I try to have high standards. I want to make sure that everybody in my life at home is important to me, and they know that, and they see that. So when I'm at work, I'm the same way. I value everybody here, right? But they also have to understand what's important to me at business. Like, what are my standards? So I've had the most success when I've been able to train people up to my standards. I use an expression called brain share. I talk out loud all the time. I share how I'm thinking. I share my thought process with others because if I don't share my expectations, they're always going to fail to meet them. And that's true like in a personal relationship, right? Like if you're in a personal relationship, you're like, hey, here are my triggers. Here's what I know I like. Here's what I know and I don't like. And here's what I need from you. And if you can do that for us, we'll be okay. And so when you share expectations, everybody, you start to grow forward. I think the final thing I would tell you is that I think having a good sales background is critical when you're dealing with multifamily because you're dealing with people. There's an expression that I've liked to use that real estate is easy, people are difficult. And that's true with the people that live in your rental housing. It's true with the people that operate your rental housing. If they don't think like you, they become difficult people to work with. If they think like you, they're the best people to work with. So I think that just getting everybody on the same path, on the same sheets, making sure you have meetings where you're quickly and comprehensively conveying what's important, what needs to be focused on, helps tremendously.
Speak to how you've done that, how you keep a pulse on that, because that's difficult as well, right? Or maybe routines you have, or maybe you've adopted EOS or something like that.
Yeah, number one is don't put your future in somebody else's hands. You know, my company did very well from 2007 up until about 2020. And that, or maybe 21, about 21. And because I was in the chair, when I took myself out of that chair and I hired a COO or I hired somebody to come in and help run it with me, the company changed because it wasn't their culture. They didn't grow up from the beginning. They don't know every nook and cranny of the company, who's strong, who's not. They change it. And you have to ask yourself here, if they were so great, wouldn't they be the one sitting in your chair? Wouldn't they be the one that signed on $600 million of debt? So if they're not the one, why are you listening to them? So I've noticed that in my career, when I took myself out of the center, we had issues. So I now keep myself in the center by a number of ways. One of them is I have at least 2 meetings every week with the entire company. Number one, I have it with my leadership meeting, I have a leadership team on Monday. Those are my regionals, my head of property management, my head of the company, the asset managers, my cares team, which is like my customer service team, my recruiter is in there, and then my investor relations, plus my executive assistant. They're in there, and we're all going through the numbers. We go through our weekly stats. I monitor everything from leases to renewals to move outs to make readies, and I have it all ranked. And I start from the bottom first. Who is my worst performing property? And then I work my way up to my best performing property. Because if I run into a time constraint, what is my priority first? To work on the worst priority, not the top one. They're doing good. They don't need to, we don't need to talk about them. We need to talk about the ones in the bottom. So I make sure that I lead those meetings. Nobody leads my meetings but me. They put together an agenda, but I carry it out. And then I free flow because I know my numbers. I get taught, if you're an investor in any of my deals, Whitney, and you ask me about a specific deal, I will know exactly what deal you're talking about. I didn't just sponsor the money, syndicate it. I operate the deal on a day-to-day basis. I know where my DCRs are. I know if we're struggling or we're not struggling. I know we're distributing if we're not distributing. I'm all aware of that. So that's my Monday meeting. My Wednesday meeting is a little bit of a watered down version with the property managers. And and we talk about what we're doing. We talk about where we're ranked. I tell them, hey, here is how I recognize if you're a good manager. For me, it's a simple equation. And number one is you got to pick up the phone when somebody calls. Number two, you have to execute on whatever you heard on that conversation, whether they need information on a apartment or whether they need something corrected with their apartment. And if you can handle those two things, you will be successful because something nobody ever talks about. You make all your money in multifamily real estate when somebody renews, not when they move in. When they move in, you lose money. You've lost vacancy loss to get the unit leased up. You have lost repairs and maintenance to get the unit ready. You probably got them in a move-in special, so when they do pay rent, they're coming in on a concession. You got marketing costs that you use to bring in the lead. You got to pay commission and salary to somebody to sell to them. It takes about 3 months before you get true NOI on any occupied unit. But when somebody renews, you spend zero, and you probably get a 3% renewal increase on top of it. So our whole company to know that. On those Wednesday meetings, we emphasize that. I need my managers thinking like me. I see their value on their occupancy and more importantly, on their turnover rate. Low turnover rate is good for us. I then tell them, hey, you want a pay increase? You want an annual review? Let me give you the cheat code and how I think. We have a wall here in our conference room, and it's called the feather in your cap wall. On that wall is you're going to be your signature, your handwriting on the achievement that you did throughout the year. And when it comes time to review for your personal review, you're going to point to the wall and say, hey, I went from the worst performing property when I took over to the number one performing property in 4 months. I took delinquency down from $80,000 before I took over down to $0 today, or down to $1,000. So it's something really small. Yeah, that's pretty good to me. You increased my economic occupancy. I took over property that you needed to refinance. I helped lease it up. I kept it full. I kept people renewing, and we refinanced the deal. So when it comes time to reviews, you point to that wall. And then we have a conversation. What am I worth to you? See, when I can convey that to my team, that's the light bulb goes off. Because who doesn't want to make more money?
That's
We all
right.
want to make more money. We're trading time away from our families to be here, or time at another property, or I'm sorry, at another company to be here. So am I getting the most value for my dollars? Now, on the other side, I tell them, I just hired you. We came to an agreement on what you wanted. You have 30 days to spark it up. Texas is an at-will state. That means you can leave at any time you want, and I can fire you anytime you want. If you don't perform in the first 30 days, you're not going to be here. And that's how it has to be. Like, I'm hiring you because there's something wrong. I'm hiring you because somebody before you isn't here anymore. And sometimes it's due to promotion or advancement, but other
Sure.
times it's because there's something was wrong. So you need to show me that you're better than the person before. Just like when I buy an apartment complex, Whitney, I have to show that I'm better than the guy before. Otherwise, I'm not going to make any money.
What so on the flip side of some of this, and we're going to talk. I'd love to talk about some of that as well, especially some of the hiring pieces that you mentioned. However, your hands-on approach is great. But what happens if something happens to you? You're hit by the bus. What's the hit by the bus scenario for Robert?
Well, that's the benefit. See, unlike other people, I have a real management company. I don't have a third party management company and I've done that game. I've seen that. And they will not look after your property the way that you want them to because they don't care. All they care about is the asset fee or the management fee coming in. They don't care about anything else. The moment you run out of money, they're gone. They will put their overhead, they will do all kinds of stuff on that. So I've learned the hard way that you don't rely on a third party management company. And I apologize to anybody that does. I've not had a good experience with it. When I can control the pocketbook, when I can control it, this is the most important thing of having your own management company is being able to execute your vision with people without any kind of obstacle to overcome with a third party management company and hiring and firing. I hire fast and I fire faster. When you're with a third party management company, you have to go through their HR. In my management company, I am HR. I decide who gets hired. I decide who gets fired, which is most importantly, who gets fired because people cost you money. That's why I said earlier is that you have a 30-day window to spark it up. And if you can't spark it up in 30 days, you're not going to be a rock star.
Do you have in-house management from day one, or at what size do you recommend you did?
So when I had one deal, I had in-house management running one deal. It was my first, well, I had two different companies. I started out with a partner in '07, and then through 2011, I exited. I started Rockstar in 2011 with one deal, and then we bought another deal, and we bought another deal. But I managed it. I think my superhuman power is that not only do I have a sales background, I'm empathetic towards people. I know how to get a sale. Is that I actually sat in that chair. I've leased apartments. I've gone out there and done the renovations. I've knocked on doors and collected rents. I've been lied to by renters who said they're going to pay me on Monday if I gave them the weekend, and they skipped out. I've had to go file evictions. I showed at eviction court. I know what it all means. And so when you've done that, you have pretty good insight into this business. So you know what kind of time they have during the day to do things and not do things. So I think it's critical that you have that success. And because I had that success, I could create my management company around those experiences. I didn't have to rely on somebody else to tell me something. I could tell if something was real or not. I could tell when somebody was lying to me or not.
So I know you've recently achieved the lowest ever delinquency rate. It may be in your portfolio, something like that. Speak to some of the strategies, just how you implemented that.
Well, number one, I think is bringing in the right people and firing the wrong people. If you're not comfortable collecting rent, then you're not going to be here because I have bills to pay. See, if I don't pay my mortgage payment, the lender tells me owns the deal, and they show me who owns the deal, and they'll foreclose on you or what have you. Number two, I have other bills I have to pay. As you know, Winnie, because you're a sponsor, taxes and insurance are ever increasing. They're non-controllable, and we just are at their mercy. So I've got to have income to be able to keep up with my rising expenses. Salaries are always going to go forward. They're never going to go backward. Or if they are, very rare. Materials and supplies, those are not going to go backwards, especially since post 2020. So you got to have people that know how to collect on the door, and they can't be here. So it's very important that your team understands that we are a for-profit company, not nonprofit. We need our rent collections to be able to afford the things that we have to pay for. That's number one of collections. Number two is making sure the residents understand that you are firm in your policies. I do a few things. Number one, I'm already communicating with the residents. I let them know before rent's due, hey, rent's due on the first. If you're having trouble, contact these assistance hotlines. Or two, we use a company, I can't think of the name of it right now, but that will offer rental assistance in the form of like cash day advances that they give them. The company will pay us in full, and they'll work on a payment program with that renter, which is helping increase our collections and so that people don't get evicted. The final piece of this is they need to understand that if they don't pay, you will follow through. All the horror stories you hear about property management have to do with one thing: is that people do not kick out people that do not pay or follow community policies. Rent is due on the first. You have until the third without payment, without late pay. On the fourth, you get assessed a penalty and a 3-day letter. By the seventh, you better come contact us and offer some sort of payment agreement. And if you need extension of payment agreement, you have to at least give us some skin in the game. We ask you that you give us your whatever it costs that I have to file an eviction. I want that in a money order. I think it's $199. You got to give me a $199 money order, which is what we call your eviction hold off. I use that money. I put it in my safe. I don't cash it. I don't want to accept payment because in the state of Texas, if I accept payment, then it's like I can't file my eviction. I have to wait for another month. So I just hold that money order in my safe. And if you don't meet your payment obligation to me, I use that money to go file your eviction. So I'm not out any more money other than my rent. If you don't have the payment eviction hold off on the seventh, I immediately start the eviction process. And that's how it is. I'm not afraid of keeping heads in beds, of losing heads in beds. They're not paying me anyway. They're taking up resources on the property. You're using utilities. They're probably having problems at home, so they're causing problems in the building they live in, which causes other people to be upset. I want them gone. I put it on my sales team and my marketing team to continue to bring in leads so that we can replace those. And I think that's how we get effective collections. It's having a sheer determination at the top of the food chain of our organizational pyramid and pushing it down. On the Wednesday calls, we talk about it. We look at it. Where are you guys at? Okay, today's the 7th. Remember, we're filing evictions today or we're collecting eviction hold on. Hey, today's the 15th. Hey, today's the 20th. Today's the last day to pay. Nobody passed the 20th. If you haven't paid your full rent by the 20th, take their money, go file the eviction. We're done. No more conversations.
No, I love how you know the numbers, how you know what to expect. It's very clear what you expect. All the way, I mean, and even from what you've mentioned, from your top level staff all the way to the person who's collecting the rent, right? Everybody knows what's expected. We're reviewing it once or maybe twice a week, and so they know it's going to be reviewed as well, right? It's known, and it's known we're going to be looking at it. Speak to, let's transition just slightly. Maybe some current challenges or even challenges that you foresee, in the near, say, 6, 12 months as well.
I never saw what happened in 2022 happen any other time. During 2022 is when the Fed decided to raise interest rates 5.5 points in I don't know, what was that, a 15-month period? And so anybody that had bought any kind of deal in 19, 20, 21 that was on a floating rate debt absolutely crushed. We had at one point 10 different deals that had interest rate exposure. And so our debt went from I don't know, 15,000 a month to $70,000 a month with a 5.5%. I had other deals that were I don't know, 50,000 a month. They were now $200,000 a month. That ate all of our cash. We had to find money. We had to scrap our CapEx projects. We had to do all kinds of things. We had to survive. And I know exactly what happened. It was at a time when I had third party. I closed on a beautiful Class A deal the day before the very first rate hike. We were naked. We had no rate cap in it. Did not know what was going to happen. Did not believe that 5.5% was coming, or maybe we would have taken other steps. But by the time I came to come fix it, it was late. The lender was tired. They didn't have faith in me anymore. I had raised all the equity, all the money to save the deal. The lender wanted me to keep the management company that had done a terrible job there in place. And I said, no. I said, I'm going to die on this hill right now. I will not give you $4.5 million of my investors' money to recapitalize ourselves, put money in the bank, give you some sort of, interest reserve, what have you, if you don't let me have management control. I cannot deliver my plan if I don't have management control. They said no, so we let the deal go. But the other 9 deals we've saved. We've refinanced multiple deals since 2022. I've got 4 deals left. I'd say 3 deals left right now, and 2 are going to get refinanced. One is next week. The other 2 deals will be in the next 60 days. And the 4th deal will be in April. And then I'll be completely out of the 10 deals I had with interest rate exposure. But you have to understand, I'm a 2-time national owner of the year. I've seen cycles. I know how to get my NOI up. I know how to stay afloat. Others do not. There will be deals that are maturing in the next 12 months that have nowhere to go because of the interest rate increases. Cap rates went up with it, which were well in excess of the 2 percentage points that we thought you should always use on your underwriting. And now people are going to be underwater. I've got a deal right now where I wanted to refinance, but the cap rate isn't where I need. I need to buy another rate cap for another year to get to another point in time where the market is more cooperative. Gives me another year to increase NOI, but another year that I can allow cap rates to compress. Not everybody's going to have that time. I still had time on my loan, which is why I can do it. I had other loans that we did refi that hit their expiration, but because of my experience, my track record with the lender closing other loans, they extended us another 3 months. They extended us another 6 months, giving us time to get into the refinance process. Without that, I would have lost those deals. But how many of those relationships do other people have? Will they be in a position that they're able to save their deals? So I think there has not been that blood in the water. There has been deals that have been lost, but I think 2025 would be very interesting. One of the things that I thought that people didn't foresee is that when President Trump won, there was euphoria in the market and people got out of treasuries. And you've seen in the last 60 days, treasuries have spiked. I closed the deal, our big refinance deal, a $30 million loan, September 13th. And I believe our interest rate was in the low 4s. If you were to close that deal today, it would be well above that. It'd be well into the 5s because interest rates, the treasury has moved so much. That's going to be very interesting to me what happens in 2025. Will rates go up? Are they going to come back down? What's going to make them come down? And there's not a good relationship between the Treasury head and Trump. So I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if cap rates will compress. I don't know if interest rates are going to stay high. If interest rates stay, is this the new norm? Are they going to stay here? What is the borrow rate going to be? So that creates opportunity and that creates despair for a lot of people.
Well, many people listening, I know, have gone through what you've just talked about, and maybe in more than one deal, as far as a foreclosure or losing a deal. Speak to how you handle the investor expectations, communications, and even after you're past that deal, to give them some guidance on what worked and what you would advise.
Well, remember too, right? When you're the sponsor, you run you're the manager of your entity, but you oversee your equity. And your equity, you need to control the narrative. You don't want them getting their information from social media or their information from the news. They need to hear from you. And there's an expression, mess with my money, mess with my emotions. If somebody's giving them a false narrative and they think they're going to lose their equity or their money, they're going to be negative with you. I had an investor who was upset with me that because we didn't refinance in the time frame I said we were going to, and he's like, oh, he sees all the negativity on the news and blah, blah, blah. And when I finally sit him down, I said, I explained to him why we weren't refinancing today, why we'll refinance in the future. But hey, just so you understand how to calculate your investment, you have a 2.5x return right now. And he had no idea because he saw, well, cash flow, where's my cash flow? Well, it's not just cash flow, it's also what is your equity creation? You have a 250% return if we were to try to sell the deal right now. But why would we sell the deal in a depressed market? My cash flow is up. I'm sorry, my cash flow is down, but that's for other factors, not having to do with performance of the property. That has to do more with the DSCR of our deals and the debt service of our deals being off. But the actual NOI itself, revenue and my expenses, we have control. We just don't want to go and refinance in a market where we think we can get a better return in a couple of years. So you need to, number one, talk to your investors and understand this is their nest egg. This is what they put money in. And you got to have regular communication. I think I'm one of the few that have monthly investor calls on all my deals with my investors. In fact, we have one tomorrow night. And it goes anywhere from an hour to 2 hours. And I go through those calls as if I was going through my money leadership call. We start from the bottom, we work our way up. I talk to you about what's going on. I show you where the properties are. I talk to you about where we're, during 22, there was no cash flow because of what happened with taxes, insurance, and then debt service increasing overnight. 24 has been a bounce back year for us. We have cash flow. I'm showing you the cash flow. I'm showing you if you're not cash flowing, here are the metrics to cash flow. And here's what I expect we're going to hit those metrics. So as long as you keep them in the loop and then hopefully deliver on what you're saying, the investors are fine. But you cannot put your head in the sand like an ostrich and hope that this problem goes away. And that's what's occurred in our industries. A lot of guys who came out of the woodwork, who joined real estate clubs, who formed, giant GP, entities, who had no idea what they were doing, who had no familiarity with multifamily, who are upside down now, don't know how to handle this, and don't know really where to go to fix it. They don't see a way out of it. Hey, I felt like that in the early days too. I remember back in 2023, holy crap, how are we going to get out of this? How long is this pain going to last? Can I survive? And, where there's a will, there's a way.
Now, I love that you've leaned into investor communication, and you said a monthly call with, I guess like a Zoom call, like a conference call. Anybody can be there and be live and talk where you're talking about a specific deal. And that takes a lot of time, but I feel like that just pays forward in a massive way.
I do the whole portfolio and then I zero in on one deal at a time. I come up with a summary sheet. We go through it really quick and I move on and I give some bullet points. I talk about if we're going to refinance, what our counselors are looking like, and I move on to the next one. And then at the end, it's Q&A time. So it goes anywhere from an hour. I got 23 deals, so it takes me a little bit. So typically from 90 minutes to 2 hours. But I think everybody likes it because they want the guy in the chair that they gave the money to know about their deal.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. You mentioned it earlier, so I wanted to at least ask because I know listeners are wondering. You mentioned about when you're bringing that new person on and they know exactly what's expected within 30 days or they got to perform within 30 days. I guess you maybe speak a little bit to that hiring process and knowing that person's in the right seat, but also how you're putting that standard up there within 30 days. So, hey, they know exactly. I love that. It's so crucial.
The best feeling I get is when I get an email and it says so-and-so is being terminated. I love that. I love when I see terminations because that means that somebody who couldn't cut it, somebody who couldn't show up on time, that somebody who couldn't deliver what they said they could deliver. He couldn't get the units ready, or they couldn't lease apartments, or they couldn't collect rent. That means somebody beneath me that I've trained, that I've instilled my standards, made a decision that that person cannot do it. I love seeing that. I have my own in-house recruiter who is one of the most important positions that I have in my business. I need to have a full-time in-house recruiter constantly creating ads, going on Indeed, going on the apartment association websites, going on social media, advertising that we have positions available. Because without those positions, I can't make the changes I need internally. Our success has been critical. The critical part of our business is the success of that recruiter that we have. So it's important to make sure that the team knows I support you. You don't like the team member underneath you? I'm good with that. I believe that if I hired right, then your standards matching mine. And I push them on there. I tell everybody, I don't just say it once. I repeat myself over and over again. You have a 30-day window to spark it up. I also tell them that this is a small industry, that if you don't do well and you don't like what's going on here and you feel like you need to leave, I'm okay with that too. But you better give me a 2-week notice. Because if you don't give me a 2-week notice, it's going to follow you. Somebody somewhere is going to ask, where were you during this time? They're going to figure out you're with me. They're going to ask me, would you hire them again? And I'm going to say no. And I'm going to tell them you walked out unprofessionally. At the same time, I've had to make sure that my recruiter understands that, hey, don't hire anybody who doesn't need at least 2 weeks to start. You make them a job offer on Thursday and they're ready to start Monday, red flag. That means they're fired. That means they're unemployed. That means there's a problem. I don't want to hire anybody unemployed. And I'm sure there's quality candidates out there that are unemployed. I don't want to hire anybody that's unemployed.
Yeah, it's a big filter for sure.
I don't want to. I want to steal somebody from somewhere else. I want to know that they were gainfully employed, that they have options and they're choosing to be here.
Somebody that's a rock star has got a job. Robert, to transition to a few final questions and kind of quick questions here at the end. What's your best source for meeting new investors right now?
I haven't raised equity to do a new purchase in about 24 or 30 months, right, because of what happened. But I noticed that 60% of our investors were repeat and 40% came from social media. There were new investors. Having calls like this, your podcast, again, I call you the Joe Rogan of this stuff because you got 2,000 plus, right? People know who you are. They see you on there. They identify yourself as being credible. You have your own management company. You have industry leading guests, right? That gives you credibility on somebody that's in the game. I think social media is a big place where to go. Meetups is always fantastic. If there's a meetup somewhere, I want to be on stage. I ask to be there. I feel like I deserve to be there. I feel like I'm one of the OGs that's still around, that I was around during the Great Recession. I bought my first deal in December of '07, right before the recession hit. I've done not just 15 100% cash on refinance events here. I did another 500% cash on refinance events back during the recession, and 5 more strategic refinances where we had to get out of our floating rate debt. So I've done it all. When I'm out there, I've got to promote myself, right? I've got to go out there and put myself on stage and say, hey, this is who I am. Because again, to borrow an expression from Cardone, if you're not promoting it, you're demoting it. If I don't cheer for myself, who will?
No doubt about it. Just like your kids, just like you were talking about your kids, right?
If I don't promote myself, who will? And final parts of that, right, is that when you do get on that stage, fucking be proud of yourself. If they give me that microphone, I stand up. I introduce myself. I'm proud of who I am. I tell you my accolades. I tell you I'm the only recognized 2-time national apartment owner of the year. I tell you I've raised $184 million of private equity, not any kind of institutional equity or family office. I tell you that I've done 15 100% refinance events. I got to tell you who you're talking to so that you understand me. And when you come off with that kind of confidence and that kind of experience, and they can hear you, like as you mentioned earlier, you can tell you sat in that chair. It comes off like, yeah, that guy's credible. You got to make sure that whatever your gift is, you promote it on social media. If you're a financial whiz, show them that. Show them you're financial. There's an Instagram site that I follow, and all he does is talk about financial statements. This is how a balance sheet works. This is how a cash flow statement works. This is what to look for in a P&L. I'm like, wow, this is really cool because I don't have a finance background. I have an engineering background and I have a sales background. And I put that together to be a good operator. But great, I love listening to stuff like that. Or if you're a sales guy, share what your benefit is. I train sales teams. I know how to get the most. I know what the questions are. And I've used all that to be able to grow this business to where I'm at. So then, and the final piece of that is talk about how you've instilled in others what you have. As you mentioned, you're only successful when you have a team that thinks like you. You're only successful when that team is consistent and they don't lead either. So share these stories. So experience is the name of the game. Show that you're a credible outlet for people to get answers to.
No doubt. Oh, I love that. Stand up and be proud for sure of what you've done and let people know. And so, speak to, I know you had mentioned Grant Cardone. Is that maybe a coach, mentor, somebody that's helped you to do that and kind of craft that message or social media presence?
I want to tell you a little bit about mentors, right? Mentors are there because they show you something that you're not doing. But you also have to recognize that you did enough just to get to that point too. You recognize yourself as somebody, you're probably somebody else's mentor and you don't even know it. I think it's important to take what you can get from others, even if you need to pay for it. I paid Grant money before, not just showing up to a lot of events, but I paid for personal private coaching. And I would say, you take all the advice in and you see what works for you. There's no plug and play advice. You need to go, and then you need to also understand, okay, does it work for me? Take what you can and then move on. Don't get stuck to somebody. There's plenty of influencers out there. There's plenty of successful business people. And just because Grant does multifamily doesn't mean that Grant's the only authority. You have to understand, Grant is a salesman too. Grant wants you to invest with him. Grant wants to buy a Class A deal. So, of course, he's going to shoot down value add deals and he's going to shoot down these other things because you got to get your hands dirty. Well, I run Class A deals, and I'm going to tell you what, I don't need to own any more Class A deals. The Class A deals that I own are not the most profitable deals in my portfolio. The deals that I own are the value add deals that I bought, those 1970s and 80s deals that are easier to afford, that I can create equity. And not just that, the tenant base, which we don't ever talk about, will accept a little less. They know they're not paying $2,500 a door. They know they're paying $1,000 a door. So they're willing to put up with things that are less than perfect. When you go to a Class A deal, it has to be perfect. Everything better be right because they're paying for it. Just like if you buy a luxury sedan, right? Let's just say a Mercedes, you're not going to put up with anything less than it being perfect.
That's right.
But if you go buy a Honda and you hear a little road noise, you're not going to be upset with it. It's what you paid for. Is it? You knew what you were buying when you bought it. You know, so I think it's one of those things where you have to you take the advice and then go back to old mentors that you listen. I used to listen to Gary Vee all the time, man. I love Gary Vee. And then I found Grant. I would always go back and forth, and I got stuck on Grant for a period of time. But now I'm listening to Gary Vee again. I'm like, wow, I really like back to that the compassion, the person, the ethos, which Grant is not about. Grant's not about the person,
Right.
but Gary is. And then you got other guys like a Hormozy, or you have other ones that are just that big thinkers as well, right? That put big thinking into very easy ways to understand it. So I think it's very good. But the final thing is you just take their advice, write it down, read a book, see how it affects you, apply it, execute it in your vision, and then move on. Don't get stuck to somebody. Don't get stuck. You're constantly evolving. Don't get stuck to somebody. Don't forget that what you did was good enough to get you to where you're at.
Robert, how do you like to give back?
Man, I get back to my team a lot. I do. I think I've really been able to get the very best out of people. I know how people think. I try to find out what motivates them, and I try to push on that button. I try to show them that there's another way to do business. You know, for the longest time, we had no college degrees in this building. And yet we were one of the most successful property management companies out there. It was really interesting is that as I started stacking and growing and adding college degrees, we didn't necessarily get better. We just got more expensive. If you have heart, I will get the most out of you. And so I try to get back with my team in terms of like what's important to you. I try to make what's important to you important to me. We had a young lady that started with our company last year, and you know she was only a year out of school, and her father passed away, and she was buying a car, and I helped her. I helped her with the process. I sat down with her. I helped her get educated on it. She asked me questions. We did role play, and then I let her call on the phone and talk to the salesperson, and she grew from that. And next thing you know, now she's negotiating everything in her life. And I did that because I know she needed that mentorship. So I just try to be there for other people where I can to try to get the best out of them and to try to show them the mistakes that I've made so that they don't make those same mistakes.
No, appreciate that. Appreciate the focus on the team too, and just giving back in that way. No doubt that's builds an amazing culture. Also, Robert, appreciate your time today, to say the least, and just sharing some hard knocks as well. That because I think we're all going to have them eventually, right? Like you said earlier, everybody expects us to bat 1,000, right? And it's just not going to happen every time, right? So, Robert, how can the listeners get in touch with you or learn more about you?
Well, Whitney, first of all, before I forget, thank you so much for having me on your show. It has been an absolute pleasure to talk to somebody who is in the game, who understands it. And then you're a fantastic interviewer. You allow me an opportunity to speak and just keep the conversation going, not get all ego and just talk about what you are, right? You allow your guests to talk. So thank you for being that. It's a fantastic trait you have. But if you want to follow more, you want to learn more about me, you know, these kind of podcasts, these kind of clips, go to Instagram is my biggest source there on YouTube at Apartment Rockstar, where you can find me, or if you just want to be my friend, find me on Facebook or on LinkedIn, where we post articles and just little updates on who we are as a company, but also some of my personal life. So at Apartment Rockstar on Instagram or YouTube.
Awesome. That's a wrap, Robert. That's the end of the show. Thank you so much.